There is a moment that most people never talk about. Not because it is rare, but because it is so deeply painful that language itself seems to fail when you try to describe it. It is the moment when you realize, with absolute clarity, that no one is coming. Not your family. Not your friends. Not the people who once promised they would always be there. You are standing in the middle of your own collapse, and the world around you is perfectly silent. You have felt this before. Maybe you are feeling it right now. That heaviness in your chest when you scroll through your contacts and realize there is not a single name you could call at 3 in the morning without feeling like a burden. That strange loneliness that hits hardest not when you are alone, but when you are surrounded by people who have no idea what you are going through. You smile. You say you are fine. And somewhere deep inside, a part of you slowly begins to believe that maybe this is just how life is supposed to be for someone like you. But what if I told you that everything you have been taught about this experience is wrong? What if the very thing that feels like your greatest defeat is actually the doorway to the most important transformation of your entire life? This is not another motivational speech about staying positive. This is not about manifesting better energy or cutting toxic people out of your life. What I am about to share with you is far more uncomfortable than that, and far more honest. Because the truth about rising again when you have no support is something that most self-help content will never tell you. Not because they do not know, but because the truth does not sell as well as the lie. The lie is simple, and you have heard it 1,000 times. You need people to succeed. You need a support system. You need a tribe, a community, a circle. And on the surface, this sounds reasonable. It sounds healthy. But here is what no one talks about. This belief, when it becomes your foundation, turns into a prison. Because the moment the support disappears, and at some point it always does, you do not just lose the people around you. You lose yourself. You lose your ability to move forward because you have built your entire sense of capability on the presence of others. You have outsourced your strength to people who were never responsible for carrying it in the first place. And when they leave, or when they simply stop showing up, you are not just alone. You are paralyzed. You are standing in the wreckage of a life that was never fully yours to begin with. Carl Jung understood this better than almost anyone who has ever lived. Not because he read about it in a textbook, but because he lived through it in the most devastating way imaginable. In 1913, Jung experienced what most psychologists would call a complete psychological breakdown. But what happened to him was far more complex than that label suggests. He had just been publicly rejected by Sigmund Freud, the man who had been his mentor, his intellectual father, the person who had given him credibility and status in the world of psychoanalysis. Freud did not simply disagree with Jung. He severed the relationship entirely. He called Jung's ideas dangerous. He turned the entire psychoanalytic community against him. Colleagues who had once admired Jung now treated him as an outcast. Invitations stopped. Letters went unanswered. The man who had once been considered Freud's intellectual heir was now standing completely alone. And here is where Jung's story becomes truly relevant to yours. Because Jung did not do what most people do when they are abandoned. He did not chase validation. He did not beg for reconciliation. He did not try to prove himself to the people who had turned their backs on him. Instead, he did something that most people would consider insane. He turned inward. He descended into the darkest corners of his own psyche. He began having visions, conversations with figures that emerged from his unconscious mind. He recorded them meticulously, painting them, writing them down, treating them as if they were as real as the physical world around him. The academic world thought he had lost his mind. But Jung was not losing anything. He was finding something that could only be found in absolute solitude. But this is only the surface. What was really happening beneath Jung's breakdown was something far more profound, and it has everything to do with why you are struggling right now. Jung developed a concept that he called the shadow. The shadow is everything about yourself that you have hidden, denied, or rejected in order to be accepted by others. It is the parts of you that you learned were not welcome in the world, so you buried them. You buried your anger because people told you to be calm. You buried your ambition because people told you to be humble. You buried your pain because people told you to be strong. And over time, you forgot those parts even existed. You built an entire identity around what was acceptable, what was safe, what would earn you approval. And when the approval disappears, when the support vanishes, you are left face to face with a version of yourself you do not recognize. That terrifying emptiness you feel when no one is there for you is not just loneliness. It is the sound of the shadow knocking on your door, demanding to be acknowledged. Have you ever noticed that you become a completely different person when no one is watching? Have you ever felt a strange relief mixed with terror when everyone leaves and you are finally alone with your own thoughts? That is the shadow. And most people spend their entire lives running from it. They fill the silence with noise, with relationships, with constant activity, with anything that will keep them from having to sit alone in a room with who they truly are. The need for support, the desperate craving for someone to tell you it is going to be okay, is often not about love or connection at all. It is about avoidance. It is about using other people as a buffer between you and the parts of yourself you are terrified to confront. And this is where most advice fails you completely. Because the typical guidance falls into one of two traps. The first trap tells you to become completely self-reliant, to need no one, to build walls so high that nothing can touch you. This sounds empowering, but it is actually just another form of avoidance. You are not facing yourself. You are fortifying yourself against the world. The second trap tells you to find better people, to build a new support system, to surround yourself with the right energy. And while this sounds healthy, it often just restarts the same cycle of dependency. You are replacing one set of external validators with another. Neither path leads to genuine transformation. The real path, the one Jung discovered in his darkest years, is far narrower and far more difficult. It requires you to sit with the discomfort of having no one, not to overcome it, not to fix it, but to let it work on you. To let the absence of external support force you into a confrontation with everything you have been avoiding about yourself. Jung spent years in this confrontation. And what emerged from it was not just personal healing, but some of the most transformative psychological work in human history. During his period of isolation, he produced what would later become known as the Red Book, a massive, illustrated manuscript that documented his journey through the deepest layers of his unconscious mind. For decades, this book was kept locked in a vault, considered too personal, too raw, too dangerous to publish. When it was finally released in 2009, the psychological community recognized it as one of the most important documents in the history of the field. Every major concept that Jung is known for, the archetypes, the collective unconscious, the process of individuation, all of it was born during this period of complete abandonment. Not despite the abandonment, but because of it. This is the part that will challenge everything you believe. The process that Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, is not something that happens in comfort. It is not something that happens when you are surrounded by people who validate you and tell you what you want to hear. Individuation, by its very nature, requires a breaking away. It requires a period where the external scaffolding of your identity collapses and you are forced to build something from the inside out. The support you are missing right now is not a tragedy. It is a prerequisite. You cannot become yourself while everyone around you is telling you who to be. Think about this honestly. How many of the decisions you have made in the last 5 years were truly yours? How many were shaped by what someone else expected, what someone else would approve of, what someone else would support? How many times have you abandoned your own instincts because the people around you would not understand? The absence of support does not remove something essential from your life. It removes something that was often getting in the way. It strips away the noise and leaves you with nothing but the raw material of who you actually are. But here is where I need to be completely honest with you, because this process is not beautiful while it is happening. It is brutal. There will be nights when the silence feels like it is swallowing you whole. There will be mornings when you wake up and the weight of having no one to turn to feels physically unbearable. There will be moments when you question whether you are growing or simply breaking down. And the truth is, it is both. Growth and destruction are not opposites. They are the same process experienced from different angles. The caterpillar does not simply sprout wings. Inside the cocoon, it dissolves completely. It becomes formless, structureless, unrecognizable. And if you could ask the caterpillar what it felt like, it would not describe transformation. It would describe annihilation. You are in the cocoon right now, and there are signs that the process is already working, signs that most people miss because they look nothing like progress. You are starting to feel uncomfortable with the person you used to be. Conversations that once fulfilled you now feel hollow. Goals that once motivated you now feel meaningless. People you once admired now seem like they are performing a version of life rather than actually living it. You might interpret these feelings as depression, as loss, as evidence that things are getting worse. But they are not. They are evidence that the false self you constructed to earn other people's approval is beginning to die. And that death, as painful as it is making room for something real. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But he never said it was a pleasant privilege. He never said it came with applause or recognition or comfort. The people who have genuinely transformed their lives, not the ones who post about it online, but the ones who have done the quiet, invisible, agonizing work of rebuilding themselves from nothing, all of them will tell you the same thing. The turning point was not when someone showed up to help. The turning point was when they stopped waiting for someone to show up. When they stopped interpreting their solitude as punishment and started recognizing it as initiation. What you are going through right now is not a sign that life has abandoned you. It is a sign that life is demanding more from you than it demands for most people. Not everyone is asked to walk this path. Not everyone is forced to confront themselves with this level of honesty and rawness. The fact that you are here, listening to this, still searching, still trying to understand what is happening inside of you, tells me something about you that you might not see yet. You have not given up. And the part of you that refuses to give up is not the part that was built by other people's approval. It is the part that has always been there, underneath everything, waiting for the noise to stop so it could finally be heard. You do not need to rise again in the way you think you do. You do not need to return to the person you were before everything fell apart. That person was a construction. That person was a compromise between who you really are and who the world allowed you to be. The real question is not how to get back to where you were. The real question is whether you have the courage to become someone entirely new. Someone who was not built by consensus. Someone who does not need permission to exist. Someone who was forged in exactly the kind of fire you are standing in right now. Jung built a tower. Literally. After his break with Freud, after his descent into the unconscious, after years of solitude and confrontation with himself, he began constructing a stone tower in Bollingen, Switzerland. He built it with his own hands, without electricity, without modern conveniences. It was not a retreat from the world. It was a declaration. It was physical proof that he could create something lasting and meaningful out of nothing but his own will, his own vision, his own hands. He did not ask for help. Not because he was too proud, but because the tower had to be his. It had to come from a place that no one else had touched or influenced or approved. And that tower still stands today, a monument not to isolation, but to what becomes possible when a person stops waiting for the world to give them permission to build. You are building your tower right now. You just cannot see it yet because you are still standing too close to the foundation. And foundations are ugly. They are buried in dirt. They are invisible. No one looks at a foundation and sees the building it will become. But everything that will ever matter about that structure depends on what is being laid right now, in the dark, in the silence, with no one watching and no one cheering. So I will not tell you that everything is going to be okay. I will not tell you to stay positive or to trust the process or to believe that better days are coming. What I will tell you is this. The absence you feel right now, the void where support used to be, is not empty. It is full of something you have never had the silence to hear. And the question that will determine the rest of your life is not whether someone will finally show up to help you. The question is far simpler and far more terrifying than that. Now that no one is telling you who to be, who are you going to become?